Welcome, everyone, to this special conversation with Jack Cornfield and Tara Brock. We'll be talking about answering the call, becoming a certified mindfulness meditation teacher. My name's Tami Simon. I'm the founder of Sounds True, and it is my great joy and privilege to be joined now by Tara Brock and Jack Cornfield, who are two of the most well-respected and loved meditation teachers in the world today. Jack and Tara have joined forces to create a new 2-year mindfulness meditation teacher training program. Participants will have the chance to attend 2 meditation retreats with Jack and Tara and also receive over 75 hours of video teachings, as well as having the chance to interact with a personal mentor and participate in monthly online mentorship groups. The training is designed so at the end of 2 years, participants will graduate, receive a certificate of completion from the Greater Good Science Center, and be all set up to flourish as mindfulness meditation teachers in the world. Okay, Jack and Tara, to begin, can you share with our listeners how the two of you decided to team up to create this teacher training program?
Well, I'm glad to jump in because I have such a visual memory. Jack and I were in my kitchen, and we have a long history of teaching together, and we love to teach together, and we're very good buddies. And we were talking about um, the need for mindfulness teachers, just how many people are really wanting to do it, and how much need there was, and how would it work to do an online program, and how could we make it happen that so it would be really engaging and rich and alive. And it was right in that kitchen conversation that we thought, well, let's go for it. Let's try this.
And I remember that conversation, and I remember the vision behind it. One of the most satisfying things that I've done in my whole life is to train teachers. It's a way of taking something that I love and that has transformed my heart and my relationships to the world, and lots of people who come to practice mindfulness and compassion and forgiveness in the ways that Tara and I teach, to empower others to spread it is one of the most rewarding and beautiful things that I've ever done. And so when we started to talk about it, I thought, well, the world is becoming so much more accessible online. And could we make a program where people, not just in North America, but if you were in Nairobi or in Jakarta and you had the inclination and had the background to do it, you could be trained beautifully and empowered to become a teacher, and it would spread to benefit people in a very wide way. So we got really excited about it.
And I'm curious to know, what specifically were you both tracking in the society as a whole, where you were able to say, yes, we need a program like this now online, a teacher training program?
I sometimes think about in the Chinese script, the word for mindfulness is present heart. And one of the things that's so glaring right now is that the suffering in our world is coming because of a sense of fear and separation. And we can look at the headlines and just see how it's spiraling. And so to have people that can teach about coming into presence, feeling the kind of self compassion that can then widen out so that we can really experience each other as real beings and be able to communicate and connect and bridge conflicts and distance. It seems like the most important thing we could have in the world. And so the kind of program that we got excited about, there are a lot of teacher trainings that are cropping up. The things that felt really important to us was a program that really taught people how to teach about how do you be mindful and open-hearted in relationship, how to bring mindfulness and compassion into social activism, how to work with trauma because there's so much trauma. So we could see, all right, so we've got this society where there's so much loneliness and isolation, anger and fear. How do we create a program that's really relationally focused, and not just how do we teach about relationship, but how could the people doing the program create a community amongst themselves that would be really rich and have a real sense of belonging and togetherness there to inspire them.
And in addition to that, which is so important, we're building on the fact that in the last couple of decades, there have been 5,000 scientific papers and studies on the benefits of mindfulness and compassion by leaders such as Richie Davidson and so forth. And then that research, which is completely secular and not related to any religious, Buddhist, or otherwise tradition, has made it possible for us to understand how to weave in social and emotional learning in schools, in communities, in business. So, for example, the Consortium for Social and Emotional Learning that came out of Dan Goleman's work, who was a longtime meditation practitioner, has now spread to tens of thousands of school systems. And John Kabat-Zinn's work of mindfulness-based stress reduction has spread to thousands of hospitals and clinics. And there's a growing understanding from the research as well that we human beings have the capacity to live with greater well-being, with greater connection to ourselves and others, with deeper compassion, and that these can be learned and trained. And it transforms the children who learn it in schools. It transforms us as we learn it. And the beautiful thing for people who then go on to become teachers of this is that it deepens their own personal experience and integrates it in their lives as they are able to offer and connect with a community of others, as Tara spoke of.
What you were making me think of, Jack, as I was listening, is that there's also such a readiness in every sector of the society. As you mentioned, Jack, in schools. I mean, I think of Washington alone, that over 10,000 children have now been introduced to mindfulness, and in the nonprofits that we just did a training at Humane Society, and on Capitol Hill, teaching, we just were teaching a series to the Senate that in every domain, medicine, business, there's a readiness and a willingness. And so, how to nurture that, how to feed that is the question.
I'm imagining someone now who's listening to this, who's starting to get excited. They're starting to have this sense of feeling called to be trained as a mindfulness meditation teacher. But then they have the question, do I have what it takes? You know, my practice is a bit on again, off again. Do I really have what it takes to be a mindfulness meditation teacher? What would you say to that person?
Well, that's really a hard question, first of all. I think more importantly, do I have a deep longing to learn to more fully embody mindfulness, compassion, loving kindness? And do I have a longing to connect and share that with others? And if you do have that, then the prerequisites, of course, are that you have to do your own practice. You have to have done a retreat or two or longer. In fact, many of the people in the current rounds of programs that we're completing have done a number of years of meditation practice, and that may well be so for some who are listening. But also, even if you're new, you have to give yourself to it, to develop a practice that is systematic for yourself. And when you do, you start to realize that it's a process of inner empowerment. And of course, self-doubts will come. And in the training, we teach how to become aware of the doubting mind, doubting yourself or doubting others. It's a state of mind. Thank you for your opinion. I appreciate you're trying to protect me. And then realize that, oh, I'm bigger than that, that I have within me not only a longing, but a capacity to deepen in presence and mindfulness and care and love. And in the spirit of teaching it to others, I too will grow and deepen. So if you look inside and you have that kind of intention and it resonates for you, and you're willing to do the work of the taking retreat and doing your own practice, which most people want to do if they're interested, then you're probably a good candidate.
Yeah, I've seen many times how when there is that deep intention and people get on the teaching track, how it then really draws out the best in them. There's an understanding if you really want to learn and go deep in any area, teach it. So I've seen, and I see this with myself, that when I'm really thinking in the mode of I want to be able to share what I'm cherishing with others, it actually has me deepen my attention to what's most important. So I do think it brings out the best in us, and the prerequisite is that this is a profound passion, this process of waking up and helping each other wake up.
Jack, you mentioned earlier that training people to be meditation teachers has been tremendously gratifying for you. And I'm curious for both of you, Tara also, what do you think in your experience makes somebody a good meditation teacher? Are there certain qualities or characteristics? You meet someone in a training and you think they're going to be a good teacher, they've got it. What is it?
Two things, I would say, and then I'll explain them. I'd say wisdom and compassion. First is that they have a good heart, that basically those who want to teach or share others do so out of a motivation of caring, caring for themselves, caring for the people in front of them, caring for the community, that there's some sense of we're in this together, and let's bring our best qualities forth. Let's bring our best selves to the table. Let's help each other live in a way that's both wakeful and free, but also in a way that really has a care and a respect or a tenderness or a dignity for each person. And so that quality of appreciation of the heart is a really central one. And then the other is that they have their own understanding to share. It's not just a technique, but if you have done your own meditation practice and sat with your doubting mind or your restlessness or your own confusion or fear, the difficult things that might come up, the unfinished business in your heart, and learn how to tend it with compassion and understanding and not get so reactive and caught in it, you start to learn the power and the gift of mindfulness itself. And when you've learned that, then very naturally for many there comes the next step, like breathing in and breathing out. Yes, I used to get reactive and frightened and upset and angry and hurt and so forth. And now those things happen, but there's a whole different way to navigate them that I've learned. And here you too can learn this, so that there's some understanding of inner freedom and well-being along with that caring heart.
So that's beautiful. I like. I sometimes think of it as the two wings of the bird. That there's the wisdom, and then there's the heart, and we need both to fly. And there's a few other qualities. You know, as you said, Tammy, if I'm scanning and somebody really strikes me as, oh, this person could really be a good teacher, and there's often a kind of courage in that process of self-examination, a kind of a radical honesty. The poet Mark Nepo described it taking the exquisite risk, like this real, because there's such a dedication to waking up, a willingness to really look deeply and be vulnerable. And with that comes a kind of emotional intelligence, as Jack was describing, to navigate emotions and have a kind of trust that we can be with these emotions, and in that being with, uh, a real natural kind of a spaciousness and presence and heart space opens up. And so trusting that we trust our capacity to be with experience. And maybe the last piece I'll add on is a good communicator. And by that, I mean um, a good listener, because to teach means to really be able to listen to what another person needs and respond to a whole range of different kinds of people, and how we wake up, and also articulate, able to speak in a way that's clear and has some flexibility in how to express ourselves. So those are just a few qualities that jump out to me.
Now, Tami, this isn't exactly the question you asked, but hearing you, Tara, speak about trust, I want to add a couple of things. First, I've really come to trust that people who undertake this path of offering teachings to others will grow in it. And, they have their doubts, or others might have their doubts. But what I've seen is that uh, placing yourself in the role of someone who's beginning to offer teachings that really come from the heart of how to be present, how to live in a wise way, um, it uh, it builds a kind of confidence and understanding in you, and you grow in ways that really would surprise you. And I watch people, and they're hesitant in their own, sense of themselves. Can I do this? And in the beginning, maybe nervous and so forth. And what I see inevitably is that through time and practice, people become a channel for things that really matter to them in these ways: compassion, wisdom, loving kindness, understanding. And I trust people to grow in it because I've watched it for hundreds of people over these years that I've trained. The other piece of trust that's so beautiful is that as you practice, and then as you teach to others, which Tara talked about, really deepening your own practice, you begin more and more to trust the capacity of the heart to hold this human life in compassion, all of it, all the joys and the sorrows, the beautiful things, and to trust that out of it can grow wonderful qualities, that you can become more grateful, you can become more connected, you can become more peaceful in yourself. So this sense of your own capacity and the trust in the process itself is both what you learn, what you're a part of, and it's equally beautifully than what you impart and see in others.
Tara, you mentioned that the original seed vision for this program came with you and Jack at the kitchen table, and that the two of you in conversation and partnership spent a lot of time, and I know this from working with you both on this program, really designing the teacher training for maximum learning and maximum growth and transformation. And I'd be curious if you can share with our listeners how you designed the program, what some of the special features are of the training.
Yeah, well, we knew that, there'd be a central piece of online video learning where we'd offer out some basic materials. But what really we got excited about was how can this be really alive and interactive? And so that's where we started developing this notion of having peer groups meeting together, and then people meeting with mentors, both individually and in small groups, and having those meetings be a place where I could practice skill building and have them do reflections and journaling and sharing what's coming up. So it becomes a very intimate, relational process of learning. And that really got us excited. So we designed the program around both what we would deliver as teachings, but also this very interactive piece with both peers and with a small mentoring group. The other piece that mattered a lot to us, Tammy, was having a practicum that would be really doable as a way to that each person could leave this program feeling that confidence that Jack was talking about, that hey, I can be present and have this channeled through. And the practicum is pretty straightforward and doable, but it's a powerful piece, and it gets processed in the mentoring groups. Then the last thing I'll mention, and Jack, you may have some things to add, is that we wanted to bring in the very best people we knew, that could bring different dimensions of the practice and teachings to bear. And so we have gathered a faculty of people we love, that we know and love, and that we know will be bringing incredible, juicy material to the program.
And Tara, just to interject one clarifying question, can you help people understand what a practicum is if they're not familiar with that?
Yeah, thank you. So there's 1 year, the first year of the program is much more intensive in terms of the uh, online learning. The mentoring goes throughout, but the second year is when there's a practicum, which would include teaching a 4 or 6 week introductory course so that each person will know all the basics in terms of teaching mindfulness and compassion that would go into that introductory course, and we help people figure out how to design it and how to implement it and so on, and they get the support of their mentors in doing that. And then there's one other short program we have people teach also to supplement it, so they get real hands-on experience with the teachings.
Great. And Jack, anything to add about how the program's been designed?
Yeah, as Tara said, we brought in also some other really wonderful outside people on a variety of topics, from neuroscience to um, diversity, to you know psychology and positive psychology and healing and so forth. We also brought in a beautiful body piece. We have really great trainers, especially from Jonathan and Tisha, who are part of our faculty, giving people ways to help teach others to come into their body through movement, through Qigong, through the very simplest kind of mindful movement practices that you could use in a teaching in a business or a school, or many, many other circumstances. And then the way we design the pedagogy, rather than it just being a lecture where we tell you things, is we will offer teachings in a really systematic way for the participants so that we cover all the basic principles and the pedagogy. How would you teach mindfulness of emotions or the body or working with thoughts or relationships? But after we offer teachings, then we give a whole series of either practices or inquiry questions or dyads or small groups that will be done online with others, in which you take these things, reflect on them, learn from them, connect with others, so that the way that we teach is really modeling how we hope others will be teaching. It's not just giving information, but it's inviting the experience and the wisdom that's in someone to be revealed through their own care and attention. And that form of teaching is both much more effective and, truth to tell, it's a whole lot more exciting and interesting. And it makes the program much richer.
What it brings to mind is that what what we were really dedicated to was including themes that sometimes are missing in trainings that feel particularly critical and right now for the times. And for instance, woven throughout our is multicultural sensitivity. How do we really be part of a multicultural world and wake up and realize our own biases and keep emerging in that way to belong to our wider community? The whole sense of that social activism, that spirituality is not going off into a cave, but really feeling what's important in our heart and participating actively in our broader community. And then, as Jack mentioned, that it's an embodied kind of practice, that we're not trying to go off into some abstraction, but really grounding it in waking up our senses. And the mindful movement sessions are beautiful. In fact, those that participate will leave knowing how to lead a few short flows that help people arrive fully in their body, which really powerful. And there's an emphasis on relationship that is really alive and good. And the last thing I'll mention is that we really pay good attention to trauma, to how to work with fear and trauma, and the emotional states that really need attention are that arise in all of us, and that these practices actually can bring a tremendous amount of healing to.
Yeah, there's also a focus and time spent on relationship to the role as a teacher, what makes you comfortable, how you can feel into that role in a way that's successful for you. And we talk about very specific things as well that are important. The ethics of a teacher for themselves and for others. We talk about money and sex and power and how we navigate those if we take this very beautiful and moving role of trying to help others. And what does it mean to be in the seat offering these teachings? How can you hold yourself in a way that is both respectful to yourself and others, not either egotistical in one way and puffed up, but on the other way, not denying that you're carrying something that has tremendous value, and that it's had value to you and you want to pass it on. So we might call those teacher role studies, if you will. What does it mean to be in that role with another person? And those two become important in learning how to offer what's the best that you've learned to others.
It's interesting, Jack, that you mentioned the topic of money, sex, and power as a teacher, because I think one of the interesting things about the teacher training program is that you and Tara really speak to the people in the program teacher to teacher. You talk about what it's like as a meditation teacher, sort of pulling back the curtain to the experience, sharing with people things like, what is it like to prepare to give talks and teachings? And how do you both do that? And how do you deal with some of the difficult questions you might get from students in a class? And I wanted to pause right there on that one. What are some of the difficult questions that you get, for example? I'm just curious about that.
Well, first, just to say that's one of the fun parts in the training is when we raise that and actually have the group help us. What are the most difficult questions you can imagine? And then how might you answer? And the small groups and people start to wrestle with, well, if somebody raises their hand and say, tell me what happens, what's karma, or what happens when you die? There's that kind of question, sort of the spiritual ones. Then there's the questions like, oh, Tara, are you single? Would you go out on a date, or Jack, or whatever, where there's a request for personal information, and so there's a whole array of both spiritual questions, of difficulties that people are having in themselves or with one another. How do I deal? I'm supposed to be meditating, but I'm in the middle of a divorce or a loss of someone in my family. How do I deal with this tragedy that's just happened? So there's a huge range of very compelling questions that come out when we ask for the most difficult questions. And it becomes a little bit of a game or a joy to raise difficult ones and then to see the wisdom of the group come and say, here are ways that you can answer this. And of course, we have our experience and skill to add, but we really want to bring it out of the people that we're with.
Okay, and then helping mindfulness meditation teachers not fall into the pitfall that we've seen many spiritual teachers fall into, this pit of some type of abuse of money, sex, and power. You talked, Jack, about how at a certain point a teacher can feel that they're almost channeling the inspiration and the energy. They become magnetic in their teaching, and before you know it, this pitfall of, yeah, don't you all love and admire me and I'm on a power trip, etc. So how do you, I know this is a really big topic, but I'd be curious here, even just in this conversation, if you could give our listeners a sense of how you educate teachers not to abuse money, sex, and power.
I would start by saying we talk about it and bring it right into the open. There has been so much abuse of money, sex, and power everywhere, including in what's seemingly the most pure spiritual territories. One of the ways I think about it, Joseph Campbell has an image of this circle of awareness with a line going through it, and whatever's below the line is outside of our conscious awareness, and whatever's above the line is in awareness. So our whole approach is, can we get really aware, really honestly, and without judging or shaming, of where this exists in our own lives, how it could exist in the teaching role, and to talk about it with each other, and to know that the more we have unmet needs inside us, the more liable we are to get hooked in some way. And so, what we do in the training, which I love, is we invite different reflections on this and have people journal about it and then talk with each other. And they become peers that can be accountable to each other. And what Jack and I have both seen in over the last many decades in spiritual communities is that teachers that teach in isolation, where they have people that are worshiping them, but they're really kind of, at the top of the hierarchy, always get in trouble. Whereas when there's a collaborative kind of process of teaching and we have peers and we can talk to each other about what's going on, there's a way that we can grow together through when these energies and seductions come up and not make them bad, just make it, oh, this is just part of growing and waking up together as teachers. So we try to have it be really in the light of awareness.
And we will have for this group a very clear set of ethical guidelines and a process to use if you feel that there's difficulty, again, who you can talk to, who's your peer group, and so forth, or how to navigate this. So making this conscious and deliberate seems not only healthy and responsible, but again, we're trying to model what is a spirituality and a process of awakening look like in modern times. Because as Tara said, whether it's in the entertainment or the political or, the church and the other religious institutions, we've seen misuse of power so often. Here we are dealing with trauma, we're dealing with learning to know your own mind and heart. And these then become included in that, making it conscious in a way that we're really creating a whole other model of how to be responsible to one another and with one another, how to wake up together. And including these areas is really central to it.
Okay, just a couple of more questions. I'm curious if you can respond to that person who might be listening who is feeling quite a bit of longing to be part of this training program, but is perhaps thinking, I don't know if it's my destiny to be a mindfulness meditation teacher and put out a shingle, and before you know it, this is my life. I don't think that's my destiny, but I'm really interested in attending this program for my own deepening and development. Is this program for me?
When I hear that, the first thing that comes to mind is that if someone's own deepening development's not intrinsic to the draw, then it's not a match. So that has to be there. And because really, we teach from the radiance of our own realization. That's what we teach. And it's our trust in that that helps other people to trust. And what we found, and this is true in the current cohort, and I know will be true in the next, is that teaching ranges. There's formal teaching, and some people are going to be teaching formally in courses to the public. And then there's the teaching that happens that we just build in to our work as a nurse or as a realtor or as a coach or a therapist or a teacher, where the principles of mindfulness and compassion are intrinsic to what we're doing. So we just teach by living them and sometimes a little more explicitly. And then there's the sharing informally with friends and family. But what I've found is that the more we cherish a path, a process, some practices, the more it's natural to share them. We can't not share them. So I don't worry so much, whether somebody's going to put out a formal shingle or do it informally. Um, I really trust that if there's a longing to go deeper into this material and in some way know that's going to ripple out, that is really, that's a fine way to begin.
And what we're seeing from the current training is that people are really creative in not just in a practicum, but in the way that they're going to do it. Some of them, run a preschool and they're running a group for parents on mindful parenting. And it's a beautiful thing. And they're not becoming the great professional mindfulness teacher of Kansas City or wherever they happen to live, but they're taking the place that they live and work and offering this, and somebody else is doing it, in the tech world, some in business, some offering classes. There are really 1,000 different forms. And it doesn't mean that one has to leave your life or your job, but rather that this becomes a set of skills and a capacity that you can build as much as you like, but that also you can really weave in to who you are, and what you do in your community and in the world around.
As we come to a conclusion here, just two things I'm going to sneak in. One is, could you share with us your vision for the graduates of this program and the impact that they can have in the world, and how more and more people becoming mindfulness meditation teachers could really make a difference in this time that we're in?
It's so clear, Tami, that while the development of the world of technology has grown so vast, the internet and nanotechnology and biotechnology and so forth, human beings now need to learn the inner technology of the heart and share it. We need to know that we are connected to one another, that every breath we take came over the Pacific Ocean and, dusted the tops of Mauna Kea and Mauna Loa and the Siberian, steppes, and that we interbreathe with the whales and the polar bears and the people of the islands, and that this is our life and our planet. And that development of a sense of stepping out of just the small sense of self and knowing that who we are is this vastness of life, and that we can bring the great heart of compassion and a deep sense of understanding and freedom to not just to ourselves, but really to humanity. This is where we are as a species. And the training of many teachers of mindfulness and compassion, to me, is one of the avenues that supports a transformation of consciousness that we all need to be part of and participate in for our benefit, for the benefit of our children and the environment and the globe itself. And so I see teachers all over bringing these skills into every dimension of life, so that it becomes ubiquitous, that of course we would want to be mindful. Of course we would want to operate with a sense of interconnection and care for one another, because it's our family, it's us. And that transformation, to be able to be a part of fostering that, is really a great blessing for us as teachers and for all the other young teachers who will be joining us.
That's beautifully said. So maybe just to add a little bit of a different language, that it feels so much like evolution is speeding up. And we're now learning, science is showing us that we can actually evolve ourselves by how we pay attention, that whatever we practice gets stronger. And so I see people leaving these trainings, and rather than practicing judgment and creating separation from others, practicing looking at others more carefully and deeply and seeing where the vulnerability is and reaching out with compassion. And people leaving this program, and rather than this negativity bias of looking at what's wrong, looking at another person and seeing the goodness, the light that lives inside that being, and helping to call it forward, seeing the goodness. And I see it happening all the time. I think of it in terms of reclaiming the sacred feminine that's inside all of us. This, that if we think of evolution, the part of our brain, the most recently evolved part of our brain, has those relational networks that allow us to feel our connection with each other and live from that. So this training actually wakes up that part of the brain and wakes up the heart in that way. And as Jack said, you can see it in all sectors of society. I mean, I think of what the Dalai Lama said, that if all school-age children could be taught to meditation, that war would be obsolete in 30 years. We can do that together. We can pay attention in ways that wake up our hearts and minds and really ripple out to make a difference in this world.
And to end our conversation, this may be a bit odd and unexpected, but what occurs to me is I'd love to know if you'd both be willing to give all the people who are gathered, who are listening to this right now, who are considering answering the call, becoming a mindfulness meditation teacher, if you'd be willing to give them some type of blessing in their journey in discovering themselves in this greater capacity.
Of course. And we'll do it tandem. We can each do it. I mean, part of the blessing is really to tell people to listen to and follow their heart. Because in the end of life, the big questions that we ask when we get to the end aren't so much, what did I get? But really, how well did I love? Did I love well? Did I offer myself to the world in a way that nourished my heart and those around me? And this is so even deciding whether to do such a program, or how to go ahead with your own, spiritual growth. The listening itself becomes part of the blessing. And the blessing I would offer is, just as you listen to the wind in the trees when a storm is coming and there's a beautiful change in the air, just as you listen in the morning on a spring day and you hear the birds chirping and they've come back, you know, just as you listen if you have a child to have they fallen asleep, a young child, and you're tending them. Listen in that same way. May you have the blessing of listening to the best in your own heart and what you could nurture and develop and how you could offer and bring that forth in your life to those you love and to the world around you. May you be blessed in that way.
Just to add, as you're listening right now, you might sense yourself pausing and invite yourself right here into the moment, into presence. Feel that listening going on right now, letting the breath come in and out of the heart. And you might close your eyes and gently touch your heart. Just place your hand on your heart and sense that you could offer whatever wish or whatever blessing to your own being in this moment most resonates. And you might sense a bit of softening and opening, sensing into that heart space that really does include all beings, sensing your wish and blessing for all beings.
Tara Brock, Jack Cornfield, thank you so much. Thank you for your deep sincerity and generosity. Thank you.
It's a pleasure.
Thank you, Tami. We love being with you.
And thank you, everyone, for being with us. SoundsTrue.com, many voices, one journey.